Up, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Football Insiders. The Miami Dolphins seemingly have committed to their quarterback of the now and the later. Should the Minnesota Vikings do the same with Kirk Cousins? We're going to talk about that. We're also going to get into all of the divisional matchups coming up this weekend. And I will take a mea culpa lap on Tom Brady's legacy, something we talked about a few weeks ago that Trey eviscerated me on. And he was right, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And let's bring him in here because he's with me every single week. Pro Football Network senior NFL analyst, Mr. Trey Wingo. What's up, buddy?
Brett, what did I do? What did I get right about Tom Brady?
You want to start there?
Well, no, I just will. I mean, like, I'm curious. Like, what happened?
And we'll talk about this because this is I want to get to in a little bit. But Tom Brady's legacy, this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
This doesn't.
Well,
matter.
now, okay.
you want to do it? You want to do it?
No. You're saying it doesn't affect his legacy, but it could affect his market value, and we'll get into that.
That's, my friends, what we call a tease. So let's kick off with another. Well, I almost said another because I'm so used to Brady being in the AFC East, but he's not. Yeah. But this guy is, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. The Miami Dolphins came out in a press conference, Trey. Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel both saying that Tua Tagovailoa is, without question, the starting quarterback for the Miami Dolphins next year. Now, listen, we have seen this before. Anything can happen between now and then. But there's an extra thing here with Tua's health and the concussion history. My first question to you, Trey, is should the Dolphins be committing to Tua Tagovailoa long-term?
Well, let's take this for what it is, right? This is a statement by a team that was just eliminated in the postseason, who didn't have their starting quarterback because of massive failures on the part of the NFL, and quite frankly, some of it in the organization itself by not being more careful in monitoring his situation. It's the only thing they can say right now. It's the only thing they can say, right? And there's a part of me that believes absolutely they want to be committed to Tua Tagovailoa going forward, and they are hopeful that that's the case. But there's literally nothing else to say right now, unless you want to start fueling rampant speculation about Tua's health, his availability, and how, for lack of a better term, how eager you are to explore other options. So it's the exact right thing to say in January after your season ends. But remember, kids, just because you say it in January doesn't mean it's going to be true in March or July or August. Take it for what it is. Hey, when Blake Bortles was drafted, the Jaguars said, we want to redshirt the kid. We don't want him to play at all this year. That lasted, I think, 3 games. Okay. Jimmy G is our guy. Well, we made the pick for Trey Lance. We traded 3 first-round picks. You say what you need to say right now, and it may be true, but understand that it doesn't mean anything because it's January. And the Dolphins don't really have to worry about their quarterback situation until March at the earliest and possibly July.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, images of Cliff Kingsbury declaring Josh Rosen as the guy. He's our guy. Kyler Murray was a Cardinal less than 2 months later. Yeah. So for me, Trey, I will say this because I think there's a real conversation to be had about the relationship between Tua and the Dolphins. I had said this a little bit. Remember my mispronunciation of the word infanticize. I believe the Miami Dolphins went to painstaking lengths this season to overcommit to Tua because his feelings were hurt because Brian Flores could give 2 craps about Tua, apparently.
Right.
And what we did see, and there is numbers to support this. Let me steal a page from the great Trey Wingo and say, can I give you some numbers? Let me give you some numbers.
Give me some numbers, big boy.
All right. In the first part of the season, when Tua went down, Buffalo and then Cincinnati, then missed a game after that. Okay. The Miami Dolphins were scoring at a rate of under 0.7 of a point per minute of possession time. When Tua came back, when he came back from injury that first time, the concussion, that jumped up 31% to 0.914 points per minute of possession time. Clearly, Tua made an impact. Now, when he gets hurt again, the Packers and all the way through the postseason, that drops by 48%, their scoring output. So Tua being at the helm clearly impacted their ability to score. And there's no question that he was leading this Dolphins offense in a way that had us talking about them in November as real Super Bowl contenders.
Well, I think that is true. But I think it's also a way of saying that Skylar Thompson and Teddy Bridgewater aren't good enough, right? I mean, two things can be true at the same time, right? Absolutely. Of all the quarterbacks available to the Miami Dolphins in 2022, 100% Tua was the best. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't other quarterbacks that could be very productive with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and Mike Gesicki and a healthy Raheem Mostert if he doesn't have a fractured thumb, and a healthy Teron Armstead. It's just not Teddy Bridgewater, and it's not Skylar Thompson. Okay, so I think what you're seeing is if you have a competent quarterback with the weapons the Miami Dolphins have around said competent quarterback, your offense is going to be pretty good. If you have a 7th rounder out of Kansas or Kansas State, I can't remember.
Kansas State, and Teddy Bridgewater, who's bounced around ever since he was a 32nd pick in the draft all those years ago. There's a difference. So yes, Tua is better than those guys without question, but that doesn't mean other quarterbacks couldn't do what Tua did in that offense. It's not a knock on Tua. I'm just saying that's the most logical way. That's the most logical way to look at it. If you have a quarterback with a competent skill set in that offense is going to produce points. Okay. So let me ask it this way, just for clarification's sake, because we know that you say anything about Tua, you better check your mentions and protect your DMs. All right. And you get a lot of mentions.
Or don't care about those things at all. But shout out to DJ Dirty J. Yes, it is playoff beard time for sure, my man here. It'll probably come off before the Super Bowl, but what the hell?
And big shout out to my guy Tyler Olson for bringing up dew point. That's a knock, Trey, on my sports betting model because they know that I don't take dew point into account. So what
about real field temperature? Do you do that? Do you do wind chill?
I don't see you, Tyler and Ryan are ganging up on me on my model. But
no, we're just asking questions. There's no. This is all love. This is look. This is
all
me
I will say is check the receipts. Yeah. But to the point. There it is. Let me ask the question this way. Let's put a bow on it here. Is it fair to say that the Dolphins would be looking away from Tua not due to performance, but due to health? Would health be the primary reason?
Look, and I talk about this with Eric Mangini on the show we do for the 33rd team. You would not be doing your franchise due diligence if you didn't say, okay, Tua's great. And we love Tua, but he's had 2 concussions this year, when reality he's had 3 concussions this year. Let's just be honest about it, okay? Technically, it doesn't count as a concussion because he was cleared to come back in the game, and he played Thursday night against the Bengals when he never should have seen the field, and everybody knows it because they changed the concussion protocol, so he would never have gone back into that game and probably wouldn't have been on the field Thursday with the concussion protocol change in place. So in reality, he's had 3 concussions from September to December, okay? Yeah. You have to do your due diligence as a franchise. Tua, we love you, and your health is the most important thing. But we need to make sure if your health isn't where we need to be, we need to know we're protected as much as we're protecting you. So you would not be doing your due diligence as a general manager, as a head coach, as a president, as a VP of football operations, as an owner, if you don't say to yourself, okay, I need to know what the realistic options are here if these problems continue for Tua and it's just not safe for him to play.
Sure. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I think that's 100% where I'm at too. So just for clarification for everyone watching, make note of that. It's January. A lot can happen between now and the opening of training camp. Speaking of which, before we get to, our next topic, we did mention my sports betting model, and we're not bringing that up for me to brag about it, but to let you know that this part of our show is brought to you by Pickett. And I mentioned that because it is at Pickett, our best bet tracking app on the market. And don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Just Google it. Google best bet tracking app, and you tell me what comes up. That's where you can check the receipts and see how I'm doing with my behavior bets betting model. I'll let you know that during wild card weekend, I went 19-5-1. I nailed every single money line, nailed every single bet against the spread. Was plus 99.5 units. Trey went up 99 units with a profit margin or profit return of 160.42%. That's
so you're like the Tua of sports betting. The points went up.
That's it. There it is. Man, you are on fire. That's it. Yeah. And guys, it's not just tracking my model. You track all your bets. Track your bets. You all are betting on different sports books. Hopefully you're betting primarily on Caesar Sportsbook.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, why not? I do. And you can, if you read my articles, you know that all of my bets are based on the lines at Caesar Sports, and we'll get to them in a little bit. But track your bets too. Download the app for free. Enter promo code PFN365. The app is free, but by using the promo code PFN365, you get a shot at $100 bonus. So check that. Check my model. Tail me, fade me at your own risk. I'm just saying, and have some fun. All right. Now, second topic I want to get to, Trey, is we talked about one quarterback where a team committed to. I want to bring up a quarterback we have to ask, should his current team further commit to him? And that is the Minnesota Vikings and Kirk Cousins. We were texting back and forth as we typically do. And I asked you, are the Vikings in no man's land with Kirk Cousins as their quarterback?
I don't know if it's no man's land, but it's certainly not great. I mean, here's the most recent quote, right? When they look at Kirk Cousins, the new GM says, it's our expectation that he'll be our quarterback. Boy, there's a lot of legalese in that, right? It's our expectation unless we have a better option, and then we can expect to use a better option. Look, I want to be clear about something. Kirk Cousins, if you're saying Kirk Cousins is the reason the Vikings lost to the Giants, go away. Okay. I didn't love the throw on 4th and 8, throwing a 3-yard completion. Okay. Hated that when you had to move the sticks. But go look at the numbers that Kirk put up in the game, and then go look at what the defense did. Right. Daniel Jones has 3 300-yard passing games in the regular and postseason combined. 2 of them came against the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings defense has been horrendous all year, specifically their pass defense. 31st overall, 31st against the pass in terms of yards gained per game, which is the NFL metric. Whether you like that metric or not is a separate discussion. That's how the NFL ranks defenses. So Kirk Cousins is not the reason that the Vikings lost that game. However, I don't think that the Vikings have ever been fully committed under this new regime to Kirk Cousins. And I would expect that, look, Lamar Jackson might be on the market in some way, shape, or form. And that's something we can discuss now or we can discuss later, because the Ravens season is over and they didn't have Lamar for the last 6-7 games of the season.
Yeah, since December 4th.
Yeah. And, we thought it was a 3-week injury at the time. And look, I've seen guys come back early from knee injuries. RG3 career was never the same after that game against Seattle on one of the worst fields ever, FedEx Field, all those years ago, where his knee was completely gone, and that's why he's talking on Monday nights for ESPN instead of playing. Where Kirk Cousins was taken in the same draft in the 4th round behind RG3, who was the 2nd overall pick in 2012, and Kirk Cousins was a 4th rounder for the then Washington Redskins, now the Commanders. So I don't begrudge Lamar Jackson protecting his interest and protecting his career, but we also need to understand that I don't think, again, it's just parsing language. Okay. And even if the GM had said, absolutely, he's our guy, that doesn't mean anything either, because things can change. Tom Brady's available. Yeah. We want to talk to him. Lamar Jackson's available. Yeah. We're going to talk to him. So saying it's our expectation is like the lowest level of commitment that I can think of for an NFL executive to say after a playoff loss. Like literally, if 10 is fully in, it's our expectation is negative 0.473.
Yeah, it's so true, man. That was such coach speak or GM speak, if you will, to like, all right, I got to answer this question, but I don't want to tell the truth. How can I tell the truth and lie at the same time?
Well, it's like George Costanza. Remember, Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it.
there you
and
go.
I'm not saying I want to be clear. I'm not saying Questi Adolfo Menso is lying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, like, there's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Right.
And I think what he said was the truth. It's their expectation.
Right.
The whole truth is, unless something comes along better. And the whole truth, nothing but the truth is, we'd really like a better option, but at the moment we don't have any, so we say it's our expectation that he's going to be back.
Well said. Nothing else needs to be said on that. But I do want to very briefly talk about Lamar Jackson, because the Steve-O806 was watching us live on Twitch. Mentioned, as we were talking about Tua, that Lamar Jackson's only started 39 games since 2020. And Tua has started 36 games since he's been drafted, and he didn't start until week 6 of his rookie year. Now, Trey,
can I just say something? I hear that, but it's a concussion. It's completely different.
Yeah,
okay?
well,
it's completely different. You can't just say injuries here. That's like comparing a hangnail to a brain tumor. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, they're different things. It's one thing to be injured. It's 100% injury rate in the NFL. That's going to happen. It's 100% injury rate in the NFL.
Yeah.
The difference is, we're talking about with Tua, an injury that could not only force him to retire from football, but impact his life for the rest of his life. Okay. That's very, very different. That's very, very different than saying, well, this guy got injured and played in this many games, and this guy got injured and playing in this many games. It's the injury, not the games missed because of injuries.
Yeah. The only thing that I'll add to that is that both players, though, present their teams with the same issue, right?
Yeah.
Which is that Lamar Jackson's availability, particularly these last 2 seasons where he has missed the entire month of December. And those are the games, right? Especially
right. But let's be honest about that too.
Yeah.
And I think Lamar Jackson is being smart. There's some resentment there,
without question.
That I think played into that. So you can't just say, "Oh, look at all the games he's missed." It's like, yeah, but okay.
But do you think a team looks at that resentment and says, "Man, if we do something wrong, are we going to have the same issue with him, where he doesn't show up for us when we need him?"
I think the team has already done something wrong when they offered him a ridiculous contract to start the season. Like, if you're Lamar Jackson, I don't care. He doesn't have an agent, and I think he should have an agent? Yeah, probably. But, with or without the agent, and especially if he doesn't have an agent and you get a low ball offer, then you're the quarterback. You're saying, are you trying to lowball me because I don't have an agent? And that adds even more resentment. This is something that manifested itself in December, but has been in play since the offseason.
Yeah. That's a great point. I am on the record, and I don't know that we agree on this, but I am not a believer in committing long-term to Lamar Jackson, both from a skill perspective.
Clearly the Ravens aren't either. Let's be honest about that.
Right. And so, and for me, the injury plus not wanting to get hurt or whatever, the unavailability is a deal breaker for me. It's something that I think about.
But let's put it the other way. I agree with you. I can understand the hesitation, and I certainly think the Ravens feel that way. But now let me ask you the question: if you're Lamar, you can pretend like this isn't going to be the watershed for every quarterback contract going forward. Wait a minute. I've won a playoff game. I've been a league MVP, and you're offering me how much less?
Oh, yeah.
Than the Deshaun Watson deal? How many millions less than that?
Yeah. And how, well, we don't have to get into the legal stuff, but let me be very, very clear. If I'm Lamar Jackson, I'm 100% doing what he's doing.
Correct.
I am that. There's no question about that. My perspective comes from the other side. So my perspective comes from the other side of that. If you're the team, right, you got to, I mean, this is something I tweeted out the other day. Lamar Jackson has had one 3,000 yard season in his entire career. That was the MVP year, right? He hasn't thrown for 3,000 yards since. A lot of that is because he's missed games. If that 2019 MVP season were this year, he still would not lead the league in all-purpose yards, and he'd be behind, a quarterback in his own division in Joe Burrow, and have less touchdowns than Joe Burrow had now. So his 2019 MVP season, which was 3.5 years ago, Trey, it's not like we're talking about last season. He hasn't done that in 3.5 years, and that's not even the gold standard anymore. When you got guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow doing what they're doing in your conference.
Well, yes, all of that is true, but Lamar Jackson is not judged by his passing yards.
That's very
good. Lamar Jackson is judged by the dual threat that he has. Like, there were a couple of plays in that Ravens-Bengals playoff game where, I think Logan Wilson was chasing Huntley down on the sidelines, and if that's Lamar Jackson, he ain't catching him. He ain't catching him. Okay,
yeah, you're right.
You're 100% right. And Lamar's never going to throw for 5,000 yards. Okay, that's just not going to happen because A, the Ravens offense isn't constructed that way, and B, that's not the way to utilize Lamar Jackson at his best. You're going to use Lamar Jackson in a dual threat scenario. Okay, and you have to decide if you can live with that because, as we all know, it just takes one hit. But like, I'm not knocking Lamar Jackson because he hasn't thrown for 3,000 yards. I'm looking at Lamar Jackson. Okay, here's what we can do in the passing game and how can we improve that? But ain't nobody catching this guy the other way around.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. It's a great point. And we'll see. Look, this is going to be an interesting offseason for him. Something we're definitely going to keep an eye on and talk about as we go through it.
It's going to be choice.
Oh, yeah. Get your popcorn.
With that, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, thank you for the content.
Speaking of the latter, and then we have our guy Arif Hassan on deck to talk about this weekend's upcoming games. But speaking of the latter, Tom Brady, Trey, a couple weeks ago, we had the conversation about would the Buccaneers' losing season, and at that time it was a potential losing season, tarnish Tom Brady's legacy. And I had said, yes, I think it would tarnish his legacy. It certainly impacts the way that I view him at this point in his career. And you said to me, are you stupid? No, you said something. You said a little bit nicer than that, but you basically said Tom Brady is a 7-time world champion, been to 10 Super Bowls, multiple-time league MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Who cares what he does now? Everyone's going to remember that. That's what people are going to talk about.
Correct.
And that resonated with me this weekend, Trey, because, and I wrote about this in my preview of that game, the mythology of Tom Brady is so alive that in a game that no one should have ever thought the Cowboys could not win, they gave Tom Brady such a chance because of what Tom Brady has done over the last 2 decades. And even in a season where his team has a losing record, he clearly hasn't been a great quarterback this year. Because of his legacy, they believed he could pull it off when there was no reason to.
Well,
and that reinforced your point to me.
Yeah, I think obviously, it's like the Falcons that were mic'd up during Super Bowl 51 when they were up 28-3, and they kept saying, yeah, but that's Tom Brady over there. So there is part of that. The other part of it is the Cowboys have a history of choking like dogs. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Okay. That was their first road playoff win since 1992. They were tied with 4 other teams for the longest road losing streak in the postseason in NFL history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So part of it, like for me, look, the Bucs weren't any good this year. Brady wasn't very good this year, except for a couple of games. It was as much as who they were playing than it was Brady for me. I'm sure other people might have gone down the other way, but like Dak looked awful, disastrous in that Week 18 loss to the Commanders. Dak threw 15 interceptions this year. He only played 12 games. He led the league in interceptions despite missing 5 games. Yeah. All of that factored into, is it possible the Bucs could win that? Bucs and Brady could win that game for me, as much as the mythology of Tom Brady. And yes, there will always be mythology about Tom Brady because he's freaking ridiculous. Like, he's going to be 46. And oh, by the way, he always says he wanted to play till 45, right? Well, he turned 45 last August. He'll be 46 this August. But he has basically torched everything else in his life. Like, he's like the end scene of Once Upon a Time in Hollywoodland with Leo DiCaprio. Just, everything else in his life is gone. He's coming back like he has nothing else. He's like Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman. I got nowhere else to go. He's got nothing. He torched it all to come back and play this year. So I think he's coming back. It's just a matter of where. And the legacy of Tom Brady is not affected by what happened Monday night.
Yeah.
His marketability might be.
So what do you mean by that? Talk to me about that.
He wasn't good.
Yeah.
He wasn't good. And what do we always say about Tom Brady? And by the way, DJ Dirty J, we should talk about that in a second, and we will. The market for Tom Brady is very small. Okay. The market for Tom Brady is the market for Tom Brady when he left the Patriots wasn't huge. He has that infamous or famous, whatever, how you want to look at it, situation on the barbershop when it's like, that team is sticking with that guy. I know I'm better than that guy. Yeah, you probably were, but they were sticking with him for a reason. Now you look at the game, he threw 66 passes. He was absolutely dreadful. He was not on the same page at all with his receivers, except for one big bomb was it Julio or Mike Evans?
Julio.
I think down the sidelines for the touchdown. Yeah. He was disastrous. He looked old and slow. So where is your market for Tom Brady? Right? Let's just ask that. Where is your market for Tom Brady? He needs to go to a ready-made situation, plug and play. Right? Mm-hmm. We just mentioned Minnesota. Interesting. Justin Jefferson. They have a really good running game. They have a good offensive line. I like their tight end situation with Hawkinson and Irv Smith. Oh, wow, 2 tight ends. Has that ever worked for Tom Brady before?
Oh.
Yeah, I think it has. All right. Then there's what DJ Dirty J said, San Francisco. It's where he's from. It's where he's always wanted to play. And with the mishmash of quarterbacks that the Niners are going to have next season, Brock Purdy, whatever he's going to be, Trey Lance coming back from the ankle. Jimmy G's gone out of there after this year. I think we can assume that. What a perfect scenario for Tom Brady to go to the 49ers and mentor 2 young quarterbacks for at least a year in Trey Lance or Brock Purdy. And then there's the let's put the gang back together scenario, which is let's go to Vegas. McDaniels.
That's the compelling one.
That's the one that seems ready-made. Okay. Yeah. Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady know each other better than any offensive coordinator / head coach / quarterback maybe ever. They have Devontae Adams. They have Darren Waller. Rob Gronkowski has said, I'm bored. And he said, I wasn't coming back this year, but he alluded to the fact that he might come back in 2023. Again, 2 tight ends, Tom Brady. It's worked before. And
with even Josh McDaniels running the show.
Yeah. And even if Gronk doesn't come out of retirement, Fabian Moreau was a damn good second tight end. Okay. If Darren Waller's healthy, you got Fabian Moreau, you got Devontae Adams, you got Hunter Renfrow. That's an appealing scenario.
Who does Hunter Renfrow remind you of? And
exactly.
Not, right.
In terms Wes of Edelman, Julian Welker, Danny Amendola and Welker,
Tell me Hunter Renfrow played lacrosse and it's done. He's going up.
Done, right? Chris Hogan. So, I mean, and by the way, people would say, oh, why would he go to the AFC West where Patrick Mahomes is there? Do you not know how competitive Tom Brady is? Do you not know how competitive he is? I think I've told this story before on this show. I tell it on so many platforms, I can't remember. When Brady and the Patriots were playing a pickup basketball game against Foxborough police and firefighters. Have I told this story here?
Told it to me. I don't know if you said it during the show.
Okay. So I can't remember if it's the half or they're playing 4 quarters, whatever, and they're losing. And Tom Brady is furious. And he calls a sideline huddle, or it's in the halftime. I can't remember what it is. And he said, we're the New England Mother Patriots. We're professional athletes. We are not losing a basketball game to a bunch of firefighters and a bunch of policemen. No disrespect to the service. We appreciate what you do, but they are not beating us. He was livid. And then, of course, they went on to just destroy them down the stretch of the game. Do you think Tom Brady cares that Patrick Mahomes is in that division? Hell no. He'll say, I beat that guy twice in the postseason, once at his place in the AFC Championship game and once in the Super Bowl. Bring it on, 15. The GOAT's here. Yeah. I don't think he shies away from that at all.
Yeah, agreed. And DJ Dirty J just killing it in the comment section right now. Quote, sneaky athletic slot work. We know what sneaky athletic means. Coach's kid brings his lunch pail to work kind of guy.
First in, last out.
Okay. We've made him wait long enough. And Arif, I think you're still there. Bring him in. Let's get him in here. Arif Hassan joins us. It is time to take a look at the divisional round of the NFL playoffs. And by the way, this segment is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. They are our official fantasy partners. We're going to talk about the only 4 quarterback matchups coming in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how the quarterbacks compare to one another. You should go and play what you think based on what we said over at Underdog Fantasy using promo code PFN. You can go higher, lower on all kinds of stats, passing yards, touchdowns, interceptions, all-purpose yards, whatever it is. Go do that Underdog Fantasy. Listen to what we have to say. Either believe us or don't. Doesn't matter. But go play what you think right there using promo code PFN at Underdog Fantasy. Arif, I'm going to introduce you for a third time, then not let you talk again. Are you ready for that? All right. Arif, what's going on, man? How did you think? What did you think about Wild Card Weekend? I know your Vikings fans are probably not happy with you.
I mean, the Vikings thing is just like, yeah, I mean, I guess you kind of had it coming. It wasn't really like enormously. I'm sure it was like a frustrating loss, Trey.
You were giving them a heads up that this was coming all season.
Oh, yeah. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
You were letting them know that this was on the way.
All right, so Arif, actually, let me ask you this question: where are you? Is Ed Donatil is still there, the defensive coordinator, right?
Yeah, for now.
For now,
you mentioned that they were not very committal to Kirk Cousins in the presser, and that's true. They were substantially less committal to Ed Donatil. So it sounds like there's going to be a decision down the pike, and I don't know what that decision is going to be, but I would recommend that they kind of move forward. I like it's a defense where dollar for dollar there hasn't been an extraordinary amount of investment, but also it's not a cheap defense, right? I mean, Zadarius Smith is there, Danielle Hunter is there, Patrick Peterson is there, and maybe it's not the same Patrick Peterson we remember, but Harrison Smith, Eric Kendricks. It's even if you account for like, hey, this defense is a little bit older, some of the rookies aren't up to speed, the defense should just be performing better. I don't care about scheme or what they should just be performing better. So I would suggest that they move on. Like you said, the reason that they lost that Giants game was the defense. I mean, if you boiled it down to one play, sure, Kirk Cousins should have thrown it a little bit deeper. But the reason they lost that game was the defense. So the criticism for Cousins is not that he lost the game. Yeah. It's that you're paying him not to not lose games. You're paying him to win games.
Well, that's
not the
question.
Reason you won.
Do you think they'll move on from Kirk?
I actually don't think so. I mean, obviously, if like Lamar Jackson's on the market and he's like interested, they're not going to be like, "Wow, we love this Kirk guy," right? I mean, they'll think about it, right? But
the Packers are about to become the Packers of the '80s. I mean, we can
just, Yeah, no, we're going back to the Magic Man, right? Don
Dickey.
Yeah. It's going to be rough, especially if they decide they wanted to bring Joe Lombardi in as like some sort of legacy hire or something along those lines. We'll see. But yeah, it's the NFC North is potentially wide open, and they've got an opportunity to grab it. There's only 1 year left in Cousins' contract. If they don't extend him this offseason, I mean, that's probably it. So. I mean, he's going to be a 35-year-old quarterback at the beginning of the next season. I mean, there's not a breakout year coming for him.
Yeah.
You're not a believer in the age 35 breakout season, Arif?
Not unless you're Rich Gannon.
Yeah, I mentioned this in the group Slack, and I got a Vinny Testaverde link in response. So I got some historians in our work Slack.
Vinny had years before that. I think Rich Gannon is the model, right?
No, Rich Gannon obviously is like also a former Viking, by the way.
I was about to say, and then went on to be an MVP.
in Oakland. Okay, Arif, this is the first time you've been with us for what we call our Super Smash QB matchups of the week. So just so you know, we're going to leave it up to the selector to tell us which quarterbacks we're going to talk about. The selector plays, we talk. That's how it works. Brian, let's throw up the first one. All right. First of all, please, Arif, tell me you're a Super Smash.
I love that. I love that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, cool. All right. So look, it's the Beast of the East. We got Jalen Hurts. We got Daniel. I almost said Danning as in Eli Manning, but that's not him. It's Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, Jalen Hurts, Eagles, Giants. There will be an NFC East team in the conference championship game. Trey, let's go to you first. Which one is it going to be?
Well, I guess it depends on how healthy Jalen Hurts is, right? I mean, let's just go back to week 18. The Eagles started everybody and the Giants started nobody because the Eagles had to win that game to get the bye and the NFC East champion at the NFC East crown. And it was a 6-point game. Okay. So I want to know, is Jalen Hurts still hurting? Because he didn't look right in that game, and I'm not sure if he's still right yet. Daniel Jones is playing well. And by the way, speaking of non-committal, Brian Daboll was asked about Daniel Jones. Yeah, he played good. He's like, didn't he play great? He said, no, he played good. And people got upset with him by using the word good instead of great. It's like, guys, just he said
he's like, I don't have a lot of words.
Yeah, I mean, it's did I use the wrong G word? I don't know. Honestly, Daniel Jones is coming in on a little bit of a heater.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hurts, we all saw what happened last year in the playoff game against the Bucs. Things were a little slow. They didn't. Jalen and the Eagles offense just could not catch up. Completely different offense this year. A.J. Brown makes a difference. Extra year of seasoning makes a difference. The question for me is, if Jalen Hurts is healthy, Jalen Hurts is the quarterback in this matchup. But if Jalen Hurts is like he played in Week 18, don't be surprised if the Giants and Daniel Jones find a way to steal one here.
What say you, Arif? Because the Eagles are favored by 7.5, right? But I think to Trey's point, the injury to Jalen Hurts is such an X factor here. The Giants could be an upset specialist, which is not immune to their history on the path to the Super Bowl 2 weeks in a row. What do you think about that? I
mean, I like it. The thing is, the last time healthy Jalen Hurts played Daniel Jones, it was 48-22, right? I think just a little bit of extra healing. I don't know, I'm making it sound like they're sprinkling some salt on the shoulder, but a little bit of extra healing on that shoulder is gonna probably be enough to be the difference by itself anyway. And if in fact he's actually just relatively fully healthy, right? 100% injury rate in the NFL. He's not going to be fully healthy, but relatively fully healthy, as you'd expect a playoff quarterback to be at this point. I would give it to the Eagles, especially now that C.J. Gardner-Johnson is back, and I know he was back for the Week 18 game. But having a more healthy roster as they enter this playoffs, having that bye week is going to be really huge for them. And the real issue is not, can they stop Daniel Jones through the air? It's, can they stop Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley on the ground? There's one stat that I was looking at. It was like the perfectly covered play stat, which, it depends on how you define it. But, if you've got a defender within a yard of a receiver at the top of the drop, I think PFF counts that as perfectly covered if all the eligible receivers are perfectly covered. And the Vikings by far had the lowest perfectly covered rate in the wild card round. That's not going to happen with the Eagles. You telling me with Darius Slay and James Bradbury and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, they're not going to find a way to cover Richie James and Darius Slayton? And, they're good players, but they're not A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, right? So it's tough for me.
Trey, the way he said their names with such disdain.
Yeah,
reminds me of when you were putting fake names in for Chiefs wide receivers and no one could tell the difference.
Yeah. but it is true. I mean, this is why, to me, look, I think he probably locked up the award before. And he had to have, because it's a regular season award. But how the Giants are doing this, it's basically the same players or worse. Their receivers are probably worse this year than they were a year ago due to injuries and whatever. And they're getting it done. I mean, Jalen Smith was on his couch in November when they called him, and now he's the heart of that defense. So they're making do with a lot less. But you mentioned the injuries, right? Where are we with Sweat? Is he ready to go? Because that's a huge situation.
Yeah, their pass rush has dropped off pretty dramatically without.
What about Lane Johnson? Where
best tackle in football.
Best, yeah. I mean, he's clearly the best right tackle in football. You can make an argument he's the best tackle in football.
I make that argument.
Yeah. So
I'm still taking Trent Williams whenever he's healthy enough to limp out of the field. It's Trent Williams for me.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, so to me, it's not just about Jalen. The Eagles are they're banged up, and
I think that's true. And I think, the Kayvon Thibodeau versus backup right tackle matchup would be something that you really need to pay a significant amount of attention to. But somebody like Hurts has the ability to at least mitigate that a little bit more than other quarterbacks, even more than other running quarterbacks like Daniel Jones, right?
Well, yeah, and to your point, over the last 2 years, including playoffs, Jalen Hurts has 23 rushing touchdowns. And if that sounds like a lot, it's because it is. It's 10 more than any other quarterback over that time frame. I mean, Josh Allen is next with 13. That's how significant Jalen being able to do the Jalen Hurts thing is to the Eagles offense. I mean, 10 more rushing touchdowns over the last 2 seasons than any other quarterback in football is such a significant part of his game.
Yeah. And right before we head over to the thing, you mentioned the Giants have been finding a way to get it done. And that's true. And I think it's just been a remarkable, coaching effort from Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll. But the Eagles have been doing way more than getting it done. Like when Jalen Hurts starts, they're 14-1. That's way more than getting it done. And I think when you're in the playoffs, you got to do a little bit more than getting it done when you're going on the road against a 1 or 2 seed, right? That's to me. Again, the health of Jalen Hurts is going to be the biggest factor here. But to me, there's going to be some injuries at the pass rush, especially against Andrew Thomas. I don't think a backup edge rusher is going to do much. But the rest of that offensive line for the Giants is not that great. They're one of the worst offensive lines, independent of Andrew Thomas. And they're going to probably find a way with their cadre of run stuffers in the middle to be able to find ways to pressure the passer. Like Jordan Davis, you might get a sack. Who knows? It's not a great offensive line. So I think that, eking it out and being the underdog is fun to watch, but it's just when you go up against a team as talented as the Eagles, you're going to need a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I'm going to drop this in the comments for everybody watching, whether you're on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, doesn't matter. It should be there. I have the Giants losing this game. But I do have them covering. I have the Eagles winning by 3, 27-24. And a lot of it is like what Trey said, depending on the health of Jalen Hurts. I think this extra week of rest is going to be huge for the Eagles. And I think the Giants are going to be competitive. They weren't in their week 14 matchup. They very much were with backups in week 18. I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle there. And that's what happens. And by the way, in the comments, you will find a link to where I make that prediction. I've predicted every single game all the way to the Super Bowl. So you can check that out in my NFL playoff bracket.
Who's winning it? Just tell us now.
49ers against the Chiefs.
Maybe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Look. That's what it says.
A Brock Purdy revolution, man. I can't wait.
That's what it says.
Couple of quick notes from my good friend Jimmy Carr at Caesar Sports on this game.
Jimmy,
the Eagles have actually won 9 straight home games against the Giants in this rivalry, so it wouldn't be a surprise. Mm-hmm. But remember, the Eagles are the number 1 seed. The last number 1 seed to win the Super Bowl in either conference was the Eagles in Super Bowl 52. So we've gone Super Bowl 53, 54, 55, 56, and 57 coming up. We've gone 4 straight without a number 1 seed winning the Super Bowl. So just keep that in mind.
Great notes as always. I mean, Jimmy Carr, legend. Jimmy, I wish you were here, buddy. I miss you every day. He's alive for the record. He's just not here.
Yeah. That's I was like, how do you give you a note if he?
This is not
he's doing good.
He's doing great.
He's in great health as far as living it up in Vegas, as far as I know. All right, Brian, let's go to the next one. All right, we have done now 20 episodes of Super Smash QB matchups. And every time Patrick Mahomes has been in one, it's been the featured QB matchup. Not tonight. And I think that is okay. And much of it has nothing to do with Patrick Mahomes. It's because they're playing the Jaguars. And guys, listen, the Jaguars did literally the improbable. When it was 24-0, they had a 98.5% probability of losing that game.
What about when it was 27-0?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. Yeah. All right. 98.5%. And when the clocks hit quadruple zero, they were up on top. You're not going to get away with that against Kansas City.
No, Kansas City's going to get away with that. They did that when they were down 24 to the Texans a few years ago and then scored touchdowns on 8 straight possessions. The craziest thing about that game, guys, is that the Chiefs had the lead by the half. They were down 27-0, and they had the lead. It was the most – I just couldn't stop laughing watching that game. They had the lead by the half in that game. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, that's the difference between the two teams, right? And I think that's something that I want to lead off here with, which is this is a whole different animal than playing the Los Angeles Chargers, which you had mentioned the Cowboys are historical chokers. There's a verb called chargering, and the Chargers did it. against the Jaguars. Now, listen, I think the Jaguars aren't going to get blown out here. Do you guys think there's any opportunity that they could win this game? What do you think, Trey?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity to win the game. Do I think they're going to win? Absolutely not. A couple of things, though, we need to understand. I want to say this about Trevor Lawrence before we go any further.
Okay.
The hardest thing to do for any athlete in any sport is to suck and then in that same game stop sucking. Okay. Tiger Woods is legendary at it. I've seen that guy turn a 76 into a 66 on the golf course just by course correcting. Okay. Russell Wilson, pre-Denver Russell Wilson, 2014 NFC Championship game against the Packers. He was god-awful. He was horrendous. And then they scored a touchdown on a fake field goal. It's like, oh, holy shit, we can win.
Yeah.
Lights out. Tom Brady, Super Bowl 51, 28-3, pick six, terrible, couldn't get into the end zone. They're down 28-12 in the fourth quarter. And then on 3rd and 1 with 8.5 minutes to go, Dante Hightower trips that fumble. Oh, shit, we have a chance to win. Boom, 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 boom. Didn't miss from that point on. What Trevor Lawrence did Saturday against the Jags or against the Chargers is the exact same thing. You can't say enough about the mental strength it takes for a guy to throw 2 interceptions in the first 5 minutes, 3 in the first quarter, 4 in the half, and not get down on himself. Like, that's the best attribute any quarterback can have, okay? So I want to get that out of the way. All that being said, this is a different deal. The Chiefs are favored in their 14th straight playoff game. That's the longest streak in the Super Bowl era. Patrick Mahomes is favored in his 12th straight playoff game. That's the longest streak ever. He's 8-3 straight up. The only losses to Tom Brady twice in the postseason, as we mentioned, and of course, Joe Burrow last year. They played in Week 10. The Chiefs won by 10, 27-17, in a game that really wasn't that close. Now, Jacksonville's a very different team since then. They've been 7-1 straight up, 6-2 against the spread since that loss to Kansas City in Week 10. But this Chiefs team is on a mission. They're as healthy as they've been all year, like literally as healthy as they've been since Week 1. The only potential issue is Mecole Hardman, who's dealing with some internal injuries related to mono, I believe. But you have Juju, you now have Kadarius Toney, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was just activated off IR and ready to roll. So now you have, look at the depth they have at running back. Pacheco, McKinnon, and now Edwards-Helaire. Look at the way the rookies for the Chiefs down the stretch, whether it's Cook, McDuffie, or George Karlaftis, who has, I believe, 7 sacks in his last 6 games. The Chiefs are firing on all cylinders right now. I don't know how much they're going to win by. I would be shocked if the Jaguars found a way to win. And the other thing we need to allow for in this, and it's a real thing, okay? Emotions factor into this. Trevor said today, I don't think it's going to be louder at Arrowhead than it was at Jacksonville Saturday night.
Oh,
he did not say that.
Oh,
yeah,
buddy.
Trevor, baby. Baby.
Mark Schlereth tells a great story about one time the Broncos went there, and this was when the Chiefs couldn't win a home playoff game, okay? And he leaned over to get the snap count because he couldn't hear at Arrowhead. And the next thing you know, he was doing the dying cockroach on all fours because he couldn't hear the snap, didn't know the center had snapped it, and he got his ass hammered to him. I think it was by Neil Smith at the time, okay? So the point I'm trying to make is this is a different dynamic. Arrowhead is one of the loudest places on the planet. They just came back from 27 points down, 3rd largest comeback in postseason history. There is a residual factor to that. And I'm curious.
I'm well aware of that.
This game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having covered some Vikings hangover games over the years. Both against the Saints most recently. But the Vikings have most teams have historically not emotionally recovered from, historic comebacks. This year, of course, against the Colts, they were able to win, I believe, the next game. So, you've got some resilience there. But here's what I wanted to get across with regards to the Chiefs. So my favorite statistic when evaluating teams is expected points added, right? It tallies up all of the likely points any team is going to score at every down and distance and field position. And then the difference between, 2 plays is how many expected points you've added or lost between plays. So 1st and 10 at the 25, you're expected to score, 1.5 points on average, right? Then you throw a 70-yard bomb. You're at the 5-yard line. Now your expected points is 6.5. You have added 4.5 expected points on that play. That's a pretty good play. So that's like a really nice statistic that takes into account down and distance that yards per attempt doesn't really do. So the Chiefs are number 1 offensively in expected points added. Not a huge surprise. Defensively, they're 18th. Also not a huge surprise. They got an average defense. The 49ers are 5th in offense and 1st in defense. Who has a higher net expected points? It's the Chiefs.
Yeah. Because of how far the offense.
Yeah, the offense is so good. No one is close to catching up how good that offense is. It is wild how good that offense is. And there are some games this year where they just haven't cared, right? And
they played with their food. They played with their food. And the Jacksonville game was actually one of them. It was.
Right. It was.
Yeah, it was 27-17. They had almost 500 yards of offense in that game.
Yeah, and 500 yards. Their standard plays. They're not dialing up anything special. Patrick Mahomes is taking these checkdowns, and they waxed him, right? When they turn it on, they turn it the hell on. Right? It is wild. Like you mentioned, some teams can get back from playing poorly. Some quarterbacks can do that. It's the toughest skill. Basically, all of the 2013 season for Tom Brady, by the way, just bad through 3 quarters, and then he leads the league in fourth quarter comebacks. Right. The thing about Mahomes is that he can play like one of the top 5 quarterbacks throughout the game, find himself down in the fourth quarter, and play like the best quarterback in history. Right.
Can I just, to that point, including playoffs, you know what Mahomes' record is when the Chiefs are down in the fourth quarter?
This is stupid.
It's 14-9. No other quarterback has a higher winning percentage. That has a winning percentage. Tony Romo, I think, is next at 371.
He's at 600 plus.
14-9, the Chiefs are with Mahomes as our quarterback when they're down in the fourth quarter.
Stupid.
And the numbers when he's down by 10 are even more ridiculous.
It's just crazy.
Yeah, the issue is that it's sometimes tough to discuss Mahomes because he's not playing quite to the level of his 2020 season, right? And in that season was historic, and people get tired of guys dominating. Like, how many times have we just passed over Aaron Donald when we talk about defensive player of the year? Oh yeah, he's going to win defensive player of the year, fine, whatever. But that's like what Mahomes is doing, and that's what you're asking us to compare when you talk about the Jaguars versus the Chiefs. Yeah, absolutely, they have an opportunity to win. The Chiefs are not undefeated in the postseason in the Mahomes era. They have lost games, but man, is it hard. It is tough to find one. And it's tough for me to see the Jaguars, who have had some of the best coaching turnarounds that you can see in sports with the addition of Doug Peterson. They've extracted so much talent from that receiving core. And Lawrence is a big reason why. Peterson's a big reason why I love them, but it is not the year for them.
And Arif, to that point, Doug Peterson is the pupil. Andy Reid is the teacher.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
right. That's not to be forgotten.
Doug Peterson is great. Don't get me wrong. Andy taught him everything he knows.
That's right.
Taught him everything.
And there's a lot of stuff he didn't teach him.
And Doug knows that.
There's a lot of stuff still in the bag of tricks there.
Yeah, there's going to be some play from Michigan in 1954. Andy Reid's going to pull out.
Snow globe. Let's do it.
All of a sudden, we're going to see a snow globe into the wishbone, into the end zone. So, all right. In the interest of time,
don't just gloss over that. That was beautiful.
It was. And first of all,
let me tell you something. To the end zone. Give yourself a moment there, sir. That was really good.
I appreciate it. Look, I told you, the more we do the show together, the more your talent just comes right here. I want to get on to the next one. The only thing I'll say is, again, check out that playoff bracket. I do have the Chiefs winning 27-24 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I will tell you the Jaguars' best chance to win this game ended the moment they completed that comeback, because now the Chiefs will absolutely not be sleeping on this team.
No, they have their full attention.
So that said, we're going to move on to the next one. This one does not have a matchup because this was the last game of the weekend, and this is Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Cowboys 49ers. Trey, you and I know better than most because of our time with Steve Young, especially your time with Steve Young. This is one of the greatest historical rivalries in the NFL because of the matchups in the postseason. This doesn't have the quarterback gravitas of a Troy Aikman and Steve Young, but these are two quarterbacks who are looking to cement a legacy. You mentioned Dak Prescott winning the first road playoff game with the Cowboys in 30 years, and Brock Purdy's on a journey to try to be the first rookie to ever start a Super Bowl and maybe even win it. This could be a game that determines one of those two outcomes. Trey, what are your thoughts on this game here?
Well, first of all, real quick, interesting note. Dak Prescott at 29 is the oldest quarterback left in the divisional round.
That's
Think
crazy.
about that for a second. That's the last time that's happened. First time that's happened since 2004, when Peyton Manning at 28 was the oldest quarterback in the divisional round, which is just nuts. Look, it's kind of weird, right? The Cowboys won their first road playoff game since 1992, and they go to meet the 49ers, which was the last road playoff game they won in 1992. Now the Cowboys trying to end their streak of winning as a road underdog. Their last road underdog win in the playoffs, you guessed it, the 1992 NFC Championship game at Candlestick, which launched the Cowboys dynasty of the 90s, winning 3 Super Bowls in 4 seasons. Can the Cowboys win? I believe they can win if Dak plays the way he played Monday night. But I don't know if we're going to see that performance. Like, Dak was awesome.
He was.
Okay, he was awesome in that game. They're going to have to not only have Dak play the same way, they can't miss a freaking extra point. Okay,
extra point.
They signed they signed Tristan Vizcaino to the practice squad, which is a very nice way of saying, "Hey, Brett, we love you, but if we see one thing this week, you're out."
Get it together.
You know, his brain became jello in that game, and thank God for him. Literally, he was able to make the 5th one. Can you imagine if he had missed the fifth one? They had to cut him. Okay, he missed 3 all year. He missed 4. That was the first game in NFL history, playoffs, regular season, where somebody had missed 4 straight extra points. It had never happened before, and he was like me on a driver.
The records go back to 1932, by the way.
So it's small sample size. So I mean, like, you know, it's like when you're hitting a driver and you've hooked 2, and then I don't want to do that, so I'm going to fade it into the gorge.
Trey, I was going to say, you usually don't see yips like that except on a golf course.
Brutal. So for them to walk out of there with a win, they're going to have to get to Brock Purdy the way Nick Bosa and company are going to have to get to Dak. Can they? Yeah, they have the people to do that. I mean, they made Brady look terrible they only had 1 or 2 sacks in that game, but it was constant pressure. You and I have talked about this before, Brett. Quarterback pressures are better than sacks. Okay, a sack just means you get him to the ground. Pressure means you take him off where he wants to be. So the Cowboys are going to have to match what the 49ers front 7 can do with Bosa and Armstead and Warner and all those guys. They're going to have to match that intensity, and Dak's going to have to play at a very high level. The difference in this game is Brock Purdy doesn't have to play at a very high level. He just has to play okay, and the 49ers can still win. Dak has to be Dak from Monday night, or the Cowboys can't win.
Yeah, Reef, what are your thoughts on that? And by the way, just on that sacks versus pressures point, I work with what I consider to be the most complete edge in all of the NFL, and I can tell you the only stat he looks at the end of the game is pressures. He doesn't look at sacks. He looks at pressures. That's what he cares about. That's what coaches care about, just for everyone out there. But Arif, on that point, you know, as we talk about this game, Trey brought up something really interesting about Brock Purdy not needing to be great the way Dak does. Is that something you agree with, especially with Christian McCaffrey in that backfield, the way they're running the ball?
I get it. I understand it. I don't know if I fully agree. I think that the standard of play for Dak Prescott has to be higher, but I do think that Brock Purdy has to play out of his gourd, essentially. Like, these are both incredible defenses. I mean, the 49ers are on another level. They only hit that level in the second half of the season. That is when they really poured it on and established themselves as a dominant defense. And even in that second half of the season, I mean, they gave up 34 to the Raiders? That was kind of weird. There are holes in every defense. Defense is not that stable. I'm glad that you brought up pressure rate, because it is the most stable statistic for a defensive lineman to be able to produce. I mean, pressures predict sacks better than sacks do, and pressures predict losses better than sacks do. So I really like the usage of that. Number 1 in the league in pressure rate is the Dallas Cowboys. Number 1 in the league in time to pressure is the Dallas Cowboys. They're pretty good at it. Yeah. You know, and I think that what separates the Cowboys defense and the 49ers defense, the reason I hold the 49ers defense in slightly higher regard is just because of DeMeco Ryans. I think that the way, and which is not to say that Quinn is a bad coordinator, but the way that they tailor their defensive approach in every single game, because the Cowboys play a somewhat similar defense from week to week to week, and it works out really well for them. But now they're up against Kyle Shanahan. The way the 49ers defense tailors their approach to every single opponent that they play, the way they shut down, for example, a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, right? That was incredible. credible. And it was a completely different style of defense than, some of the other games that they've had. They'll blitz a lot in some games. They'll rush 4 in other games. They'll play a lot of man coverage in other games, zone coverage in other games. They've got the horses to do whatever they want, and then they do whatever they want. I really like that. But the problem is that Purdy relies on a particular one-dimensional style of offense. Obviously, having McCaffrey run the ball helps out too, but it's a yak-oriented short offense. This past game, we saw him do more than I think we've seen him do all season in terms of creativity, deep ball throws, things like that. But his game is a short game. He doesn't like to throw outside the numbers a lot. He likes to throw short a lot. It is a yards after catch offense. Dallas is a pretty good tackling team too. And so if they can figure out the solution to that one dimension, then it becomes really hard. And Purdy will have to put together some of the plays like he did late in Sunday. So he has to play really well, I think.
Let me, and listen, I know we're running a little long here, but let me also say this. Another thing that cannot be overstated. Cowboys played Monday night. The Niners played last Saturday. Okay. That's a significant difference in terms of time, preparation, rest. Curse got banged up, had to be helped off the field. He's only out there because Brown is hurt, and gone for the year. The Cowboys are going to have to find a way to get rest more than anything else.
Don't discount that Jason Peters left that game early.
Yeah.
Okay. Some other offensive linemen are hurt.
To bring McGovern in.
And they spent an entire Monday night trying to push Vita Vea around, who of all the defensive players on that defense, I don't care if he's not playing well, it still takes a lot of goddamn energy to move that man.
Yeah, no, that's true. I will say, though, losing Anthony Brown, that really sucks, but it did allow them to play Deron Bland a little bit more, and that guy is a really good rookie.
He played great. He played great. You just can't overstate on the road, short week. Now go back on the road.
No, that's
arguably the most physical team in football.
Yeah. Especially lots of
nobody won the week after playing the 49ers. Not a single flipping team won the week after playing the 49ers.
Let me we'll wrap this up. Let me just say real quick, I have this game as being the biggest point difference in the postseason. So in this round of the postseason. 49ers win by 10, 32-22 against the Dallas Cowboys. And the big factor for me, and Arif, you brought this up, a tale of two halves for the 49ers defense. It's also been a tale of two halves for the Cowboys defense. Before the bye week, they were giving up 0.42 points per minute of opponent possession time. I call that scoring behavior prevention rate. After the bye week, 55% higher, 0.749 points per minute of opponent possession time. They've been getting worse at a 16% rate as the season's gone on. I think that plays a factor in terms of where the trends are headed. Let's move on to our final matchup of the week. I appreciate you both hanging in with me a little bit over time here tonight. This is the MVP matchup of the weekend. It is Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Let's run it.
I do love the fact we went through all the drama when it was the only matchup left. I mean,
yeah, you know what? Our graphics team does such a nice job putting those together. We got to get it on the air. But look, this was a game. I think it goes without saying that we were hoping to see a few weeks ago on Monday night. We all know what happened with Damar Hamlin, as we mentioned on the show that week. Trey, we didn't get to see the elite performance from the players that night, but we did see an elite performance from the emergency responders who saved Damar Hamlin's life. On that note, we are going to get to see the football players play this weekend. It is a game that the loser goes home and the winner gets a shot to go to the Super Bowl. And these are the two best quarterbacks remaining in this round that we haven't talked about yet. The best, only one better, I think, in all of our opinions, is Patrick Mahomes. Trey, we'll start off with you. The Bengals are on the road in Buffalo. They are underdogs by 5 to 5.5 points, depending on the book. Is that fair? Does that make sense to you?
I'm surprised. Now, look, I want to be clear. I don't think either Joe Burrow nor Josh Allen played really well last week. And people say, what do you mean? Josh Allen threw for 4 touchdowns and threw for 300-plus yards. He also had 2 interceptions. He was careless with the football. It was a strip sack that allowed Miami to take the lead right at the start of the third quarter. If Josh Allen has 3 turnovers Sunday, they're losing. Okay? And Josh has had some issues over the last 10 weeks with issues holding on to the football. Okay. Burrow and company did the longest fumble return in postseason history to save that game, and that was a 14-point swing by that one play by Hubbard. So neither one of them has played really well in the wild card round. But listen, here's what I know about the Buffalo Bills. They don't lose at home in the postseason. Since 1988, they're 13-1 straight up in the postseason and home playoff games. And yes, that's the best record in the NFL over that time frame. The Bengals do not care about any of that. We saw that last year, where they went on the road after squeaking out the wild card game against the Raiders, went to Tennessee, then went to Kansas City. But their offensive line is a concern for me. Okay. The only good news for the Bengals is that Von Miller will not be participating. Okay. Because then if he was out there, boy, they'd be in a lot of trouble. But, Jonah Williams has a dislocated kneecap. I don't know how he's going to be able to play. The Bills are going to have to generate a lot of pass rush, and I think they can do it against that offensive line. Josh, what bothered me about the wild card game, and I'll shut up here, is that I felt like they kept trying for home run shots when they had clean singles all day. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is some of the influence of Brian Daboll not being there and running that offense.
100%.
And Dorsey running that offense. Issue. Yeah. How many throws on 2nd and 10 and 3rd and 10 were 40 yards down the field, 25 yards down the field? Dude, Bill Parcells used to always say, you never go broke taking a profit. Oh, I got a 7-yard completion. I'm taking it. Oh, 5 yards here, and then he can run somewhere for a first down. I'm taking it. They kept trying for the knockout punch, especially when they were up 17-0. I was like, just hit singles. Hit singles. They're going to have to be way more patient against a really good Bengals defense.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Jonah Williams. There's also Alex Kappa, who's got an ankle. And then they don't have Lyle Collins, right?
It's a mess. It's a mess right now.
And the thing is, that we saw the Bengals struggle with pass protection issues at the beginning of the season, first 3-4 weeks. They switched what they were doing. They switched to shotgun, but they also moved Lyle Collins to a further out wide split, in the same way the Vikings do with Christian Darrisaw. And that was a really big element of them kind of helping protect what they do, because Lyle Collins has the movement capability to widen the rush, give Joe Burrow a little bit more time coming from that side, give Jonah Williams just a little bit more help. All of that stuff was dependent on Lyle Collins being there and being a good enough player at right tackle to solve these problems. You don't have 3 of your offensive linemen. You cannot do that, especially if it's not Lyle Collins. And that's going to create a lot of opportunities, I think, for the Bills pass rush, right? Not having Von Miller, obviously it's going to hurt them, but they have found ways to generate pass rush without Von Miller.
Rousseau's been really good.
Yeah, I was about to say Rousseau's been coming on. He's been really good. And, even Ed Oliver has been pushing up the middle, even though he's more of a run stuffer these days. It's just really an excellent effort from the unit. Plus, I remember when the Bills didn't have any pass rushers at the front line a couple of years ago, they had AJ Klein blitz a lot, and it worked for them. And guess who they have? They've got AJ Klein right now. So, they might put in some packages to try and blitz a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to take Matt Milano or Tremaine Edmonds off the field, but, you've got all of these opportunities ahead of you, given the problems here with the Bengals. And I think that that's going to be kind of the defining feature of this matchup, is the Bills' ability to create pressure. And they'll do it in a variety of ways. Leslie Frazier used to be known as kind of this stale cover 2, rush 4, all the time kind of guy. That's kind of why he lost the job in Minnesota, but he has been a remarkably diverse defensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills. And in some of the same ways the San Francisco 49ers have been flexible, the Bills have been flexible about the way they approach these things. It's such seeing that Bills defense lose so many players to injury, but we've been able to see some really incredible performances from players like Christian Bedford. They still have Kyer Elam, right? Tre'Davious White returned back from injury early in the season. They have a lot of really good players. Jordan Poyer is one of the best safeties in the league. It sucks that they don't have players like Dane Jackson, but they might have the deepest defense in the NFL even after all of these injuries. So, these are both very good teams, but I think this critical element of this offensive line for the Bengals is going to be a huge problem. Joe Burrow has demonstrated some amazing pocket presence, some amazing awareness, but it can only get you so far. If Josh Allen calms down just a little bit, doesn't have to be a ton, just a little bit, I think the Bills have a really good chance here.
Okay. So quickly, your gut says Bills win, Arif?
Yeah.
Trey?
Look, sorry, hit the iPad. It wasn't an earthquake.
Don't get too excited now.
I think the Bengals' best is better than anybody's best, but I don't know if their best is on the field Sunday because of the offensive line issues.
Yeah.
Look, if they're both healthy, I'm taking the Bengals. Like if the Bengals are playing the Chiefs, I'm taking the Bengals. And like I spent 6 years in Missouri. It's a show me state. Show me you can beat them, then I'll believe you. You know, if they were healthy, I'd take the Bengals, but I think I have to take the Bills in this scenario.
For what it's worth, I have the Bengals covering and winning by 4 points, 26-22. The Cincinnati Bengals. I have them advancing to the AFC Championship game, and for what it is worth, that does take into account the injuries on the offensive line. So we will see how it all plays out. This promises to be an exciting divisional round. Trey, I believe you're on the record as saying this round of the playoffs is one of the more exciting.
It's the best. I mean, it's the best because you get 2 games on Saturday and 2 games on Sunday, right? And the wild card, some teams sneak in and whatever. But the divisional playoffs, either you earned the right to be there by winning and got the bye, or you proved your mettle already.
Yeah.
And I think to me, we still haven't had a 7-seed win since we've been doing this for 3 years. It's cool that it's extra revenue, but it still hasn't happened. This is where the cream rises to the top in the divisional play. It's the best weekend in football all year.
Should we note the last year's divisional round had the best game in the entire postseason, including the Super Bowl. Bills Chiefs was an all-timer. We'll see if we get another one this week. This has been the divisional round episode of Football Insiders. He is Arif Hassan. He's the lead NFL analyst here at Pro Football Network, and he is, of course, the great and grizzled beard vet Trey Wingo, our senior NFL analyst, and I am a guy here who gets to talk to both, and I really enjoy it. We will see you next week as we prepare for the conference championship round, and we will talk about who we think will go on to play in the big game. That's the nickname for the Super Bowl, in case you didn't know. We'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
See you, buddy. See you, Arif.
See you around.